I want to tell you about a phone call. Not an extraordinary phone call, from the outside. A voice on the other end of a line. A few words spoken. The kind of thing that happens 100,000 times a day in every city and every time zone on Earth. But from the inside, from where I was standing in my kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon in May, with my hands still wet from washing dishes and my phone pressed to my ear, it was the most extraordinary thing that had happened to me in 10 years. Because the voice on the other end was my daughter's. And the first word she said was, Mom. And the second word was, I'm sorry. I have thought a great deal, in the months since that phone call, about how to tell this story. How to do justice to 10 years of loving someone who had decided not to be loved by me. How to explain what it costs a mother to keep a door open when every morning she wakes up to evidence that the door is not being used. How to describe the 10 years without making my daughter the villain of them, because she is not. She was never the villain. She was a young woman in pain who made choices I did not understand and who had, in the years since, come to understand differently herself. My name is Carol. I am 62 years old. I have 2 children, a son, Michael, who is 35 and who has been a constant presence in my life and whose easy love I have leaned on harder than he knows in the years his sister was absent. And a daughter, Jessica, who is 34 and who did not speak to me for 10 years. This is the story of those 10 years, and of the Tuesday afternoon in May when they ended. Jessica was, from the beginning, the child who felt everything most deeply. Michael had always been even-tempered, the child who took difficulty in stride, who processed things quietly and then moved on, who was, by some fortunate combination of nature and circumstance, simply not prone to the extended turmoil that sensitive children sometimes live in. He was easy, in the best sense of the word. Jessica was not easy, and I mean that with complete love. She was vivid and passionate and deeply, almost painfully empathetic, the child who cried at books, who felt injustice anyway as a personal wound, who loved with an intensity that was both her greatest gift and her most difficult characteristic. She was also, from adolescence, the child who found me the hardest to navigate. Not because I was wrong about everything, I wasn't, but because she and I were, in certain ways, very similar. And similar people sometimes create a specific kind of friction that dissimilar people don't. We argued in her teenage years, about things that mattered and things that didn't. About the specific vocabulary of a mother-daughter relationship where both parties feel things very deeply and neither is particularly gifted at putting those feelings down before they become words. She went to college and the distance helped. Something about the physical separation gave both of us the room we had not had when we were in the same house, and our relationship in her college years was genuinely warm. Phone calls that I looked forward to, visits that I savored. Something approaching the friendship between adult women that I had always hoped we would eventually become. And then she was 24. And something happened. Not one thing. A series of things. A conflict about a decision she had made that I responded to badly. A confrontation about something from her childhood that she had been carrying and that she finally surfaced and that I received, in the heat of the moment, in ways I am not proud of. There were things said. Hard things. The kind of things that are said when 2 people who feel deeply have run out of the particular patience that deep feeling requires. I made mistakes. I want to say that clearly and without caveat. I made real mistakes in that period, in how I responded, in how I held certain things, in my capacity to hear her pain without defending myself from it. But I had not expected the conclusion she drew from those mistakes. She drew the conclusion that the relationship was more harmful than its absence. And she ended it. A short message. Clear. She needed space. She did not know how long. She would reach out when she was ready. She was not ready for 10 years. I want to be honest about what those 10 years were. Not to perform suffering. I was not suffering every minute of every day, and pretending otherwise would be both dishonest and an unfair portrait of a decade that also contained good things. Michael. My grandchildren through him. My work, which I found genuinely meaningful. My friends, who held me with the particular steadiness of people who understand that some griefs do not resolve and require simply to be accompanied. But the absence of Jessica was a constant in a way that I did not always know how to carry gracefully. The first years were the hardest. The raw years, when every holiday was a new confrontation with the shape of what was missing. Her birthday, which I still marked in my calendar every year and which I spent with a particular quality of forced cheerfulness that Michael understood and never commented on. The Christmas she got married. I learned about the wedding from her cousin, who had been invited, who told me with the careful gentleness of someone bearing news they know will land badly. My daughter got married. I was not there. I did not know his name, her husband, for 2 years. When I finally found out, through Michael, who had managed a limited relationship with his sister in those years, I wrote it in the address book I kept on my kitchen shelf, next to her name, as if having it there, written in ink, made the person more real, made the connection less severed. I sent letters. Not many. I was careful not to overwhelm, not to make the silence her problem to manage. But on birthdays, on a Christmas or two, short letters that said the simple things. I love you. I am here. No pressure. No timeline. Just here. I did not know if she read them. She did. She told me later. She read every one. In the middle years 4 through 7, roughly, I found a rhythm of sorts. A way of living with the missing that was not exactly acceptance and not exactly resignation, but something in between. Something that allowed me to be present in my life without the absence of Jessica dominating every room of it. I went to therapy. Not for the first time. I had been before, for other things, but specifically for this. For the particular grief of a living estrangement. My therapist, a woman named Dr. Andrews, who had a quality of steadiness I found invaluable, helped me understand something that I had been resisting. She helped me understand that I could love Jessica completely and also hold the reality that Jessica's choice to estrange herself had been, whatever its causes, her choice. That I was not required to dissolve into the absence or to perform constant suffering as proof of the love. That keeping the door open did not require standing in the doorway. I could keep the door open and live my life in the other rooms. That is what I did for 10 years. And then, on a Tuesday in May, the door moved. I was washing dishes. This detail matters to me. I want you to know how ordinary the moment was. Dishes. A Tuesday afternoon. The radio on in the background with a program I was only half listening to. Sunlight coming through the window above the sink in the particular May way, warm and particular. My phone was on the counter. It rang. I dried my hands. I looked at the screen, and there was her name, Jessica. Not a number I wouldn't recognize. Not a new number after 10 years. Her name, her contact, which I had never deleted, not once in 10 years, because deleting it would have required a decision I was not making. I stood there for a moment. I want to tell you honestly that my first feeling was not joy. It was fear. The fear of someone who has kept a door open for 10 years and has now heard a knock and is suddenly, acutely aware of how much is at stake in what happens next. The fear that it would be something practical, a legal matter, a family emergency, something that required my involvement but not my presence. The fear that it would be another goodbye, more final than the first. I answered, "Mom," she said. And then, after a pause that lasted perhaps 3 seconds, but that contained, from where I was standing, something close to everything, "I'm sorry." I did not speak immediately, not because I did not know what to say, but because the 2 words had arrived with such force, the full weight of 10 years pressing behind them, that I needed a moment to absorb them before I could respond. And then I said, "Jessica." Just her name, the way I had said it her whole life, with the particular warmth that is specific to a mother saying her child's name, which does not change, regardless of the years or the distance or the circumstances, because some things are built too deep to be affected by what happens on the surface. "I know this is late," she said. Her voice was different from the last time I had heard it, older, with the texture of years I had not been present for. But underneath the years, recognizable. Completely recognizable. I know 10 years is. I know there's no justifying it. I'm not calling to justify it. I'm calling because I have been sitting with this for a long time and I can't keep sitting with it. And you deserved this call a long time ago. And I'm so sorry it took me this long to make it. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Not dramatically. My legs simply decided that standing was not what they wanted to do. And I said, I'm so glad you called, sweetheart. I am so glad. We talked for 2.5 hours. I'm not going to share everything, Jessica said. Some of it belongs to her and to the particular privacy of a conversation between a mother and a daughter who have not spoken in 10 years and who are trying, carefully and imperfectly, to account for that time. But I want to share the parts that I think matter for this story. She told me that the estrangement had been, at the beginning, genuinely necessary. Not as a judgment on me, she was careful about that, and I heard the carefulness and was grateful for it. But as a survival mechanism for herself. She had been in a period of her life where the intensity of our dynamic, the friction of two similar people who could not find the right distance from each other, had been more than she could manage alongside the other things she was managing. She had needed to step back. She had stepped back further than she intended, and then the distance had calcified in the way distances do. She had built her life in that distance, married Ryan, had 2 children, a daughter, Mia, who was 7, and a son, Leo, who was 4. Children I had not met. Children who did not know my name. She had been carrying the estrangement with increasing difficulty as the years passed. Not with immediate regret. In the early years, the distance had felt right, or at least necessary. But as she moved further into adulthood, as she became a mother herself, something had shifted. I became a mother, she said, and I thought about you, constantly. In a way I hadn't let myself before. I thought about what it would cost me if Mia did this to me. And I understood something that I had not understood before. About what I had asked you to carry. She was quiet for a moment. I found your letters, she said. I had kept them. All of them. In a box. I read them again last year and Mom, you never once said anything to make me feel guilty. You never once made it about you. Every letter just said, I love you, I'm here, no rush. For 10 years. I was crying by this point. Quietly, trying not to, because I did not want her to feel that the crying required managing. That's what you do, I said. That's just what you do when you love someone. I know, she said. I know that now. And I'm so sorry it took me this long to be ready to receive it. We did not immediately fall back into what we had been. I want to say that plainly, because the movie version of this story would have the estrangement end in a call and the relationship resume as if the years between had been a brief intermission. That is not what happened. That is not what happens. The call was the beginning, not the ending. What followed was careful, slow, built deliberately, with the awareness on both sides that we were working with materials that had been through something significant and that needed to be handled accordingly. We talked on the phone every week for 2 months. Not long calls at first, 30 minutes, an hour, gradually lengthening as the familiarity returned. As the particular ease of talking to someone who has known you your whole life reestablished itself beneath the years of silence. She sent me photographs of Mia, of Leo, of Ryan, who I would eventually meet and whom I would find, immediately and without reservation, to be exactly the kind of person I would have chosen for my daughter if I had been given the choice. Of the house in Portland, Oregon, a city I had never visited, a life that had been built entirely outside my knowledge. I cried over those photographs more times than I can count. Not from sadness, from the particular overwhelm of being given back something you had thought was gone, and finding that it had been building, growing, becoming itself in your absence, and that what you were being given back was not a diminished thing but a fuller one. I met Mia and Leo in August. Jessica drove them to Seattle, halfway between Portland and my home in Bellingham, and we spent a day together. Just the 4 of us, at Feist, with Ryan joining us for dinner in the evening. Mia was curious and watchful, with her mother's eyes and a particular carefulness that reminded me of Jessica at that age. She looked at me for a while before she decided I was acceptable. And then she decided I was acceptable, and she asked me 17 questions in 12 minutes, and I answered every one. Leo was 4 and therefore had no such careful assessment period. He simply walked up to me, put his hand in mine, and said, "Can we go to the park?" We went to the park. I pushed him on the swings for 40 minutes. At dinner that evening, Jessica and I sat next to each other for the first time in 10 years. Not across a table, but side by side. The physical proximity of it was its own thing, the simple fact of being able to reach out and touch her arm, which I did once, and which she received without pulling away. Ryan is a quiet man, observant, warm in the low-key way of people who don't need to perform their warmth. He watched Jessica and me through the evening with the expression of someone who has heard about something for a very long time and is now seeing it in real life and finding it is exactly what he expected. At the end of the evening, when they were getting the children into the car, Jessica hugged me. A long hug. And she said, quietly, with her face against my shoulder, "I love you, Mom." I never stopped. I just didn't know how to be near it for a while. I held on, for as long as she let me, which was longer than I expected, and not nearly long enough. The karma in this story is motherhood. Not in a punishing sense. I do not wish difficulty on my daughter, but in the profound, humbling sense of a person becoming a parent and understanding, from inside the experience, what they had previously only observed from outside it. Jessica became a mother, and she understood, in the bone-deep way that understanding only arrives when you are living something rather than watching it, what it cost me to love her through 10 years of silence. What it cost me to keep the letters coming. What it meant to receive that love in the letters and to keep it in a box rather than to return it. She did not become a mother and immediately call me. It took several years after Mia was born, several years of sitting with the understanding that motherhood had given her. But the understanding came, and it moved her, gradually and then all at once, in the direction of the phone. Karma does not require suffering. It requires understanding. And sometimes understanding requires becoming the thing you had not fully seen. Jessica is in Bellingham next month. She and Ryan and the children are spending a long weekend. Mia has already informed me, through a text message she sent herself from Jessica's phone, which Jessica allowed and which I have saved, that she wants to bake cookies, specifically snickerdoodles. She has done research, apparently, and snickerdoodles are the correct choice. She is exactly right. Leo wants to go back to the park. I have already confirmed with Ryan that the park is on the agenda. And Jessica, my daughter, my difficult, wonderful, vivid, deeply feeling daughter who is so much like me that we spent years creating sparks by simply being in the same room. Jessica wants to sit at my kitchen table and drink tea and talk for as long as we want without looking at the time. I have cleared the whole weekend. I have been clearing it since May. I want to speak to the mothers, the ones who are in the middle of an estrangement right now, who have a daughter, or a son, or both, who has stepped away and not come back, who are doing what I did, keeping the door open, living in the other rooms, loving someone who is not currently present to receive it. I cannot tell you it will end the way mine ended. I want to say that honestly, because false hope is its own kind of cruelty and you deserve better than that. Not every estrangement ends with a phone call in May. Not every decade of silence concludes with a voice saying, "Mom, I'm sorry, but I can tell you what I know. The love you are carrying is not wasted. Even if it never returns in the form you are hoping for, even if the call never comes, even if the years continue to pass in silence, the love itself is not wasted. It is not diminished by being unreturned. It does not shrink in proportion to the distance. A love kept faithfully over years, without requiring anything back, is one of the most extraordinary things a human being is capable of. And it changes you. The 10 years changed me. Not in the way I would have chosen. I would have chosen the relationship, obviously, over the growth the absence required of me. But I came through those years more patient, more clear-eyed about my own role in what had happened, more capable of the particular grace of loving without possession, of keeping a door open without standing in the doorway. Those things did not come from nowhere. They came from the years of practicing them. And to the daughters and sons who have stepped away, I want to say something very simple. She is still there. Whatever she did, whatever she failed to do, whatever the relationship cost you in the years when it was too much, she is still there. Marking your birthday, writing letters she is not sure you will read, keeping your name in her phone. When you are ready, and I am not telling you to be ready before you are, she will answer on the first ring. This has been Soul Tales. My name is Carol. Next month, my daughter is coming home. She wants snickerdoodles and tea and the whole weekend. I have already bought the ingredients. I bought them the day after she called, just in case.